I now have the pleasure of introducing our student speaker. He was chosen by his classmates to present remarks during today's ceremony. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Woodrow Sams.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Before I get started, I just wanted to thank everybody here from OU, OUWB, and all the Beaumont physicians that were able to come out today and celebrate with us. And thank you to the family and friends for being here today one more time to support us. Also, thank you, Dr. Waterman, for speaking today. Thank you, President Hine, for coming out to support the medical school. And Dean Fulberg, without your vision and your leadership, none of this would have been possible. Thank you very much. Also, thank you to my classmates for selecting me to speak to you here again today, all together one last time. Really, I could spend the rest of the afternoon thanking and acknowledging the countless number of people who made this day a reality. But it's a sunny day and there's potato salad at the dean's reception, so we kind of have to keep things moving. But as I look around the arena and try to decide which of you would be difficult to intubate based on your Malin patty, I can't help but think how far we've come over the last 4 years. The majority of us started out with a pretty superficial understanding of medicine and its philosophy, but through tens of thousands of hours spent reading, memorizing, and putting our new skills into practice, we've developed our own approach to doctoring. We've grown into our white coat, and I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about some of the things we'll need to take with us as we leave our OUWB family and move on to the next chapter of our training. And the first thing is remember to be humble. For me, the first lesson I learned in medical school was that of humility. You're no longer a big fish in a little pond when you begin doctoring school. I had suddenly become a much less extraordinary, much less interesting fish, surrounded by younger, more intelligent fish that had already accomplished more in their adolescence than I thought possible in a lifetime. The achievements of my peers is astounding, and to this day, every time I talk to one of them, I learn about some new clinic they're volunteering at, a paper they published, or a nationwide organization that they're heading up. They're absolutely incredible people, and being compared to them daily is exhausting. This lesson in humility continues in the classroom, where we drink from the figurative fire hose of knowledge for the first 2 years. When I first heard this metaphor, I thought it was ridiculous, and the images it evoked were degrading to anyone who had earned one of the coveted medical school spots. But I can tell you now, from firsthand experience, anyone who drinks from a fire hose probably still looks better than I did after one of our biochem lectures. Then just about the time you think you figured everything out, you start third year, and the lessons in humility start all over again. They're not always in the way learners are accustomed to, though. In the hospital, humility often comes in quieter, more profound lessons, like when a patient weeps in front of you for the first time or begs you to help them. And they did this because they trusted us. Absolutely and optimistically, they trusted us. And this is an utterly awesome and sobering experience to be given all-inclusive access into a stranger's life. Remember these moments, remember to ask questions when you aren't sure, and remember when someone gives you the answer to listen. As we leave here today, we'll be doctors, but we'll still be apprentices of medicine. My father-in-law has been a family practice physician for about 40 years now, and I can say with 100% certainty that I'll never know as much as he does. He remembers things he learned before I was born better than I remember things I learned this morning. Remember that when you do a consult and listen. And the family that you're speaking to knows their grandfather better than you could ever hope to. And remember that and listen. And even if the nurse you're working with started on June 30th, they still have more experience than we do. So please ask before you touch their IV pump. And always, always listen when they tell you that the patient just doesn't look right. Second, remember to be awed. Early last year, I was on my surgical clerkship, and the physician I was working with was scheduled to perform a Whipple, a pancreaticoduodenectomy, if you don't want to be corrected by your senior for using jargon. Amazingly enough, the most difficult part of this procedure is not the pronunciation of its name. It involves removal of the distal segment of the stomach, the first and second portions of the duodenum, the head of the pancreas, the common bile duct, and the gallbladder, all organs that seem super duper important. During this 8-hour surgery, as Dr. Jury expertly, meticulously divided fascia layers and cut away diseased portions of organs, and I adequately, passively held traction, I couldn't help but think about the unbelievable amount of skill and technology that goes into a surgery like this one. Afterwards, as a member of Blue Team sat at Starbucks and ran the list, I thought for sure we'd talk about how awesome the surgery was, but instead we drank our coffee, talked about the next day's assignments, and went our separate ways. I would have brought it up myself, but I've been up since 4 that morning and spent the last 8 hours wrangling organs, so I let it go. A few months later, while Todd and I were on obstetrics together, even though we never openly talked about the miracle of birth, I saw him cry every time he delivered a baby. And most recently, as I held the probe to a man's chest and we stared at his heart pulsating on the ultrasound screen, he said, "Wow, that's pretty cool." And I paused and thought, that's actually pretty cool. It's so easy day after day to forget how incredible and meaningful it is to be a physician. We have the ability to peer inside the body to places unseen and unknown by most, but we do it so often that it becomes routine, even mundane to us. Remember our first year cadaver lab, and remember the first time you took a scalpel to human flesh. Remember the first time you saw a patient start to get better after something you had done, and take the time to be awestruck every now and again. Next, remember to be brave. Now this next story may or may not require an ethical intermission, but Dr. Nuzarello has guaranteed me immunity, and my diploma has already been printed. So besides Dr. Steck and Dean Fulberg, does anyone in the room know what an auger brush is? Sometimes they call it a corneal burr. So let's say you're unlucky enough to have a tiny metal shaving fly into your eye. Well, there's a chance that this metallic foreign body could leave a rust ring even after it's been removed. And if you're unluckier, you could have this rust ring removed by a medical student wielding a tool called an auger brush, which is essentially a Dremel designed specifically for removing these rust rings. It's basically a tiny eyeball sander. Or at least that's how I describe it to people who I'm not trying to convince I'd be allowed to use it on their eye. So a resident and I had just such a patient present to us one morning. And after we explained what had caused the imperfection, what we could do to fix it, and made sure it was okay that I personally do the procedure, we found ourselves in a quiet, dimly lit room at the end of the ophthalmology floor. The patient and I, separated only by the slit lamp used for magnification, sat inches away from each other, staring directly into one another's souls. As I inched the whirring auger brush closer and closer to the patient's sclera, both our eyes growing wider and wider, he said nervously, "You've done this before, right?" And I said calmly, "Try to hold still, sir." And a half a second later, the rust ring was gone, and 3 collective sighs of relief could be heard throughout the halls of the medical office building. Now, some would argue that the real hero of this story, the truly courageous one, was the patient. But today isn't about him. Another example of bravery, a less dramatic one, is a story of 75 people coming in day after day after day to a place where they know they're probably in over their heads, a place where they'll probably fail at something before lunchtime, a place where their physical and mental limits are strained and pushed beyond what they thought possible. But I would argue that this type of bravery, this resolute determination of spirit, is much more profound and much more difficult to come by than the finite courage of a single occasion. And simply by being here today is evidence that each of you possesses this relentless capacity for bravery in the face of adversity. Each of us will struggle in the upcoming years, probably much sooner than we think, and I want you to remember the grit and the determination that you've displayed over the last 4 years. When the days seem long and the load seems heavy, remember the bravery and the tenacity that each of you possesses. Lastly, remember to be thankful. Despite the hard work, long hours, and sacrifices each of us has made to get here today, none of us got here alone. And you don't have to look very far to find the people who've helped us along the way. They're in the stands that surround us. They're in the seats behind you, beside you, and they're here on this stage. There are mothers and our fathers, our husbands and our wives, our siblings and our children. There are lecturers and advisors, every single person in the Student Affairs Office, and the physicians and residents who supported us and mentored us. Without these people in our lives believing in us, cheering us on, and picking us up when we fall, none of us would be here today. I don't have any stories for this section, just infinite and insufficient gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your confidence. And thank you for the sacrifices you made for us to be here today. Thank you for putting up with us when we were tired and stressed out. Thank you for everything you took care of so that we wouldn't have to, especially when we didn't notice. And thank you for telling us that everything would be okay. You were right, by the way. Everything turned out just the way that you said it would. Thank you. Congratulations, OUWB, class of 2016. We made it.